Welcome to No Nonsense Nonprofits. Hi, I'm Sandy Ray, founder of Sandra E. Ray CPA, where we alleviate financial headaches so that you can create a bigger impact. Today, I want to talk to you about grant accounting. Grant accounting is complex, but for the effectiveness of your grants, it plays a crucial role in achieving financial transparency, complying with the grant requirements, and ensuring the optimal allocation of grant funds. So while it may require some significant effort, diligent grant accounting offers numerous advantages. Now, grants normally come with restrictions on how we can spend them, when we can spend them, what accomplishments we expect, the reports that the grantor is expecting back, and maybe if all the funds are not spent, we might have to return some grant funds, and we need to know what the balance is of those remainder of funds. So grant accounting provides us with two functions. Gives us as an internal team, management team, our organization, with a clear understanding of our financial status as it relates to the grant, and helps us make informed decisions. And of course, it gives us the ability to report back to the grantor according to their requirements. So detailed tracking and reporting are required to monitor our spending, to monitor the balance of the grant, and again, to report back to the grantor the progress of the grant. But we also have the complication of generally accepted accounting principles. There are some requirements with grant revenue about how we recognize revenue and when we recognize it. Now, it all depends on the grant itself. If the grant is considered a contribution, meaning the grantor gets nothing in exchange, they're giving us these funds to help us complete our mission or whatever the grant requires, then it is a contribution. Once we determine that it's a contribution, then we have to decide, is it conditional or unconditional? Now, if the grant has any restrictions at all, it's regarding when we can spend it, how we can spend it, then it's a conditional grant. And the revenue is recognized when those stipulations are met. So if we are required under a performance-based to look to serve 100 constituents, every time we serve a constituent, we get to recognize some of that grant revenue. Of course, cost reimbursement grants are conditional grants. We're required to spend the money and then request the reimbursement from the grantor. So that's a conditional grant. All other grants are considered unconditional, which means we can recognize that revenue immediately. And as far as grant tracking, is just when we recognize the revenue, that's the difficult part. Then if we've already received the funds, of course, we might have a deferred revenue if we have to wait to recognize the revenue, or we'll have the revenue right away. If we're incurring costs and doing things, we might have a grant receivable if we haven't received the cash already. So that's the revenue side. The expense side gets a little bit more complicated because every grant is different on how we can spend the funds, when we can spend the funds. Does the grant only cover direct expenditures? Can we include some overhead? What about staff time, direct staff time and overhead staff time? So these are all things that we need to consider. So it's really important to budget and plan. Fortunately for us in the accounting department, a lot of this planning has been done in the application phase. So we need to gather that information from our team members who created the application so that we can implement that in our accounting system. So it's really critical that the grant writer and the accounting team work together to make sure that what we do next helps us to implement the grant in the most efficient manner possible. So what we're going to have to do is look at those grant budgets, look at those grant requirements, see the kind of reports that are going to be needed not only for the grantor, but for us internally. There may be some more detailed reports that we want to make sure that our accounting system can handle those. So generally I start with a chart of accounts. Do we have enough accounts Will that cover like the line items of the grant budget? Do we need to make any changes? Do we have to track other things other than just the chart of account? I always want to tag transactions by grantor, not only on the revenue side, but on the expenditure side, because then I can run reports by grantor. And maybe even if you have a grantor who's giving more than one grant, by grant. So maybe we have a grantor and then we have subs by grant so that we can track those. Maybe the grant covers more than one program. So maybe we want to be able to track which program this expenditure is for. So these are things we have to think about when we're doing the setting up of our accounting system, is how do we want to pull information out? In order to do that, how are we going to set information up in the first place? How are we going to code those transactions? Then, like I said before, we need to talk about compensation. Is there any staff members who are directly related to this grant or this program? Are they 100%? Or is there some other allocation that we're using? What about overhead team members, the accounting department, the executive director? Do we get to include those kinds of overhead expenses that are compensation related? Do we get to include payroll taxes and employee benefits? All that is, how are we going to allocate that to the grant? What system are we going to use? Are we going to do it based upon time, like budgeted time or actual time? Is there some other statistic that we're going to be using? And then how often are we going to do this? Are we going to do it with every payroll? Are we going to do it once a month, once a quarter? Look at when the reports are due. What's the best way to monitor how we're spending in accordance with the grant, and also report back as far as the timing of this allocation. Now, there may be other overhead costs that need to be allocated, like rent or telephone, same sort of thing. What kind of statistical analysis are we going to use to allocate it, and how often are we going to be doing that? And then finally, we have to plan the reports. So what reports does the grantor need? Let's design those reports for our accounting system. And then for our internal purposes, what more detailed information are we going to need for not only monitoring our spending in accordance, but for tracking the grant balance? Like, say we got the money up front, we need to know how much we've spent or how much we still have available. Once we've done all this planning, then it's time to implement. And implementation is always easier than the planning, unless you've forgotten something in the planning stage. And then we might have to go back to the drawing board. But yeah, we want to make those edits to our chart of accounts. We want to make those edits to our tagging system. We want to enter those budgets in our accounting system so that we can pull reports that compare the actual expenditures and revenue to what the grant budget says. We want to create other reports that are needed for grant reporting, for internal monitoring, anything that we need. We actually need to create those reports. And of course, the grant balance report. And we need to make sure that there is, I like to call it a gatekeeper. This is a program or grant coordinator, whatever you want to call them. It could be on the accounting team, it could be the grant writer, it could be in the development team, it could be on the management team. But this is a person who's going to be very versed in this grant, because we want them to review all transactions before they get paid. Number one, to make sure that it's in compliance with the grant. And number two, to make sure that the coding in the accounting system is done in such a way that it's going to pull that information back out in reports the way it should be reported. And we want to do this prior to the bill ever being paid or the credit card transaction ever being processed in our accounting system. This person is also going to need to receive reports back to make sure that, just as a double check, that things went into the accounting system the way the grant coordinator wanted them to. Maybe something's coming down the road where we have another grant that's going to take priority. So maybe we do need to do some shifting around, but that grant coordinator, that gatekeeper, is the one who's going to be making those decisions. And then we need to report back to them what's been done. And like I said, we really want to do this immediately, so those reports can be accessed quickly, daily, if not weekly, definitely monthly, so that we can make sure that everything's running smoothly, so we're not waiting for the last minute to do a grant report and realize, hey, we still have $10,000 to spend down, or hey, we've overspent this grant by $10,000. These are the things that we want to avoid. So yeah, just that great communication between the program coordinator and the accounting department is really critical. So I hope this was helpful for you today. And if you want to learn more about this topic or other topics, we'd really love for you to put something in the comment section, and we will respond to that, and we will take your ideas for new topics and run with them. Of course, we always appreciate your likes, and I want to thank you for joining me today. Remember, if you're dealing with nonsense in your nonprofit organization, we'd love to help you cut through the noise.